Assalamu alaikum. I will be talking about my first task, which is S3 security using IAM and IAM and bucket policies. Recording audio, chalo theek hai. Acha. So starting off, these are some notes that I've made during my reading. So by default, all buckets that are made in AWS are private, and only the owner that has created the bucket can upload, read, and delete the items and the objects in the bucket. And by default, there's no public there's no public access. Now, coming towards the bucket policy, bucket policies are applied at bucket level, and of course, when they're applied at the bucket level, they would be automatically applied to all the objects that are inside the bucket, inside that bucket. And in case of the bucket policy, we cannot, apply bucket policies at individual objects. Yeah, we cannot apply them to individual objects. Instead, we use ACLs for that, and these policies are written in JSON. And yes, and ACLs are access control lists are applied at objects. They're like to provide a more granular or fine-grained access. We can grant, for example, we can grant access to different objects. For example, which accounts and users, etc., can access, maybe object number 1, 2, and 3, and users XYZ cannot access object number XYZ, etc. And yes, this is used for fine-grained control. For instance, we can give different accounts and different users different type of access. For example, the dev team can have access to create, update, and delete objects inside the inside the buckets, whereas for instance the QA team can only view these objects, etc. And another additional aspect of S3 security is that we have S3 access logs. For instance, if any user makes any sort of request to the bucket, whether they upload an object over there, view that object, etc., and all sort of requests are being logged, and they can be viewed later for security purposes. And an additional aspect to this is that we have S3 encryption. S3 also offers encryption and by default. So we have encryption in transit, which is basically the transport layer security or secure socket layer, or basically HTTPS. And at rest we have server side encryption. And so there are three types of server side encryptions, which is S3, which is S3 managed keys, and this encryption is done using AES 256. And we have key management service, where the keys are of course managed by AWS themselves. And we have SSCC, which is customer provided keys, where the customer would provide their own specific key themselves. And coming towards this, the key that is generated by AWS for encryption is also encrypted using another key called the master key, and this concept is known as the envelope encryption. Now I'm going to demonstrate uh, something. So let's start here. So I'm creating a bucket called SAD S3 bucket 1. Let me have the convention over here. And this I'm going to create this in the UCS1 region. But by default I'm disabling ACLs, access controllers, so I'm not using them right now. We have I'm going to use IAM an IAM user to block access to this. So right now I'm of course I'm the root user. Yes, and S3 is a global service, and this should be noted. And I'm blocking all of the public access right now, and versioning is disabled. These are my key pairs. Sorry, my key tags. And by default I'm using S3 managed SSE. Yes, S3 managed keys, and let's go create a bucket. Okay, this bucket name is used. Oh, okay. Okay, so I've successfully created a bucket. And where's my bucket? This is malfunctioning. Somehow the search icon is hidden. Okay, so here's my bucket. Now I'm gonna upload. No, before I do this, I'm gonna create a user. Let's say add a user. I'm gonna name him Superman. With the console access, I'm gonna give him the password BCD1234. Now let's attach an existing policy where I'm gonna only give this user an S3 read access. So S3 and read, yes, S3 read access. And next, get user Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Uh, okay, so let's log into this user. Okay, so this user only has S3 read access. So in the meantime, let me create my bucket over here. Okay, so I have my bucket created over here, and let me upload an object. Let's see, I have a picture in my in my desktop. Just tak. Okay, so as I'm uploading this file, and my this is the root user, we have read and write access for S3. Where our other user, which is the Superman, that user does not have access, does not have read or write access for this for my bucket, for S3 essentially. So of course I'm able to view this object, and I can also upload another object if I want to, because I have full access. I have S3 full access. However, for the case of user number two, this user this user does not have this user only has S3 read access. So let's go go to my buckets, and of course I would be able to view all of the buckets because this user has S3 read access. So okay, of course, let's see. If I can view this object. Oh, yes, of course I can view this object. But however, if I try to upload an object over here, let's see, upload and add files. I'm gonna add the same image over here. This should not work, and yes, this does not work because this user does not have write access to the bucket, to S3 bucket. This user only has S3 read access.